My name's Virginia Hall, and I'm here today to introduce you to Roger Rule, author of The Rifleman's Rifle and host of the series of episodes Special Guns with Roger Rule.
Thank you, Virginia, and welcome. And welcome, viewers, to my 24th episode of Special Guns with Roger Rule.
And what do we have today?
In episode 22, we covered the handmade Reimer Johansen Magnum Mauser made in Germany. In that video, I told the story of how my cousin Randy, planning a hunt for bears in Kamchatka, called me for advice in choosing a special rifle for it. I also mentioned that as part of the story, I called a good friend of mine named Bud, who knew more about big bore rifles than I. Bud had then enlightened me about Magnum bolt actions, both past and present. I had shared with him that Randy wanted a top gun and had the pocketbook for it. And hearing that, Bud had said if money were no object, then Hartmann & Weiss or Waffen Jung were probably the most expensive big-bore bolt-action rifles made. He had added, but those two come with frills, such as color case hardening, engraving, gold inlays, etc. He said if Randy just wanted the best Magnum Mauser without the decoration, he recommended Reimer Johansen. And if you're familiar with that video, you know that Randy ended up buying a Reimer Johansen in 416, and that was the gun we featured in episode 22. And that rifle is a fantastic sportsman's firearm, having every feature the safari hunter cherishes, as well as being put together with perfection. However, no frills. After Bud introduced me to those three makers, and the fact that I had never heard of any of them, I kept an eye out for all three over the years. From time to time, Champlin Firearms, or is it Champlin Arms? Stephen Barnett Fine Guns and Griffin and Howe would have a Reimer Johansen, but the intervals of finding them were scarce and very far apart. I believe on average I'd see one about every 3 or 4 years. For Hartmann & Weiss, actually, the first one I saw after watching for one was listed by Ralph Martini in British Columbia. I was able to purchase it and bring it into this country. It was a low serial number 866, chambered in 7x6 for Brennecke. The craftsmanship was impeccable, but being an early one by the makers, it carried little decoration. I've seen other H&W rifles since, but only a few, and all have commanded extremely high prices.
Do you still have that rifle?
No, sadly someone wanted it more than I, and I traded it. Having never seen any guns made by the third maker that Bud mentioned, Waffen Jung, over time I forgot about them. Then, in 2005, I ran across a gun blog where the question was asked, what is the best bolt-action rifle in the world? Naturally, that grabbed my attention, and expecting to see Winchester Pre-64 Model 70, or at least a familiar name, I was dumbfounded when some astute blogger answered Waffen Jung. At first I didn't remember the name, but there was something about it that was familiar. Then it hit me. That was one of the three makers that my friend Bud had recommended for my cousin several years ago. Back then, I couldn't or didn't know how to search for unknown makers on the internet. But in 2005, it was a different matter. I Googled Waffen Jung and discovered the maker's website in German. It was a little confusing because the German word Jung is spelled with a J. I could not read a word of it, but the photographs of the guns told me everything. I saw photos of amazing firearms that brought to mind the work of Hartmann & Weiss. Having owned one Hartmann & Weiss and examined others, I really could not say that Waffen Jung represents any less quality from just examining their magnificent photographs. So, from 2005 on, having finally rediscovered Waffen Jung, I began looking for, but never saw a firearm made by Theo Jung, not one. Waffen, by the way, means weapons. It's part of the company name. The maker is Theo Jung. Most Americans do not know the name Waffen Jung. Many of us know Hartmann and Weiss because they are represented outside of Germany with their London outlet besides their Hamburg base, allowing their guns to have worked their way into Canada and America. We don't know Waffen Jung because the maker only has a German address in Lomar and is so backlogged the company has no need to expand its market. In Germany, there is a following that believe firearms by Theo Jung have absolutely peerless quality. You can order a new Waffen Jung if you are in Germany and if you have 7 years to wait. So where is this all leading? Ever since I was reintroduced to the name Waffen Jung in 2005, I've never forgotten about them again and have always wanted to examine one in person. And since I follow GunsInternational.com so closely, I see the occasional Reimer Johansson that comes up and the rare Hartmann Weiss that slips through the system. But as I've said, I've never seen a Waffen Jung rifle until a few weeks ago.
Is this the rifle that you saw?
Yes.
Where did you find it?
From a dealer on Guns International who had labeled it wrong, but was still asking a hefty price. I purchased the rifle, and after I received it and made a close examination, it didn't let me down. It easily compares to any H&W with the similar features. You could not say one is better than the other. Both makers have reached perfection in every detail.
Is this a new rifle?
By condition, yes. The fact that I bought it secondhand means that it was pre-owned. But it's in immaculate condition. Its serial number is 1482, and I'm sure if you could get access to Waffen Jung's records, they could tell us the date the gun was made. According to their website, this model is simply called their rifle Magnum. I think that's a direct translation. If an interpreter would say it in English, he or she would turn it around and call it Magnum rifle. Before we inspect it, here's what I have about the maker. This is translated from their website. I quote, Waffen Jung manufactures the complete bolt-action rifle. From start to finish, they ensure that everything is crafted to their high standards. Each rifle is tailored to hunting requirements, needs, and personal tastes of the customer. Master gunsmith Theo Jung ensures each hunting rifle he makes is a unique creation and a work of art. Close quote. Further, the maker tells us that each bolt-action rifle is newly manufactured using Mauser 98 type actions, which are fabricated in-house, machined, and hand-filed to very high tolerances. The double square bridge actions are made in 3 sizes, short, standard, and Magnum. The maker also offers all 3 actions in left-handed versions as well as takedown versions. The Turkish wallet chosen for the stock comes from a large selection of 100-year-old Caucasian wallet stock blanks that are cut from the tree's roots to display the most colorful grain pattern throughout. They are then finished with a special process to give the stock a durable, weather-resistant coat. This high-gloss finish beautifully embellishes the rifle and gives it a personal touch. And finally, engraving is accomplished by master engravers and enhanced by traditional color case hardening finish or other finishes as requested. The following is an excerpt from Theo Jung, or Jung, in his own words, translated here. By the way, on that pronunciation, the first time I ever saw it in writing, it was spelled with a J, so it's been hard for me to get that out of my head. It's kind of like Sako and Seiko back in the...
Yeah.
Anyway, it's Jung. So here's the quote from Theo Jung himself. Our precision hunting rifles combine master craftsmanship and beauty, lasting quality that can be passed on from one generation of hunters to the next. Applying technical innovations and maintaining perfection in the gunsmithing trade are the pillars of our success. Our team of artisans are highly motivated and steeped in tradition. As a customer of Waffen Jung, you can expect the finest quality in all our rifles. Signed, sincerely, Theo Young. Close quote. I found more about Waffen Jung from East India's largest guns shooting and outdoor journal, Indians for Guns, in an article entitled Possibly Hartmann and Weiss's Only Rival in Making Mauser Bolt Rifles, written by a noted firearms expert in India, Mehul Kamdar. I'm going to read that one and quote that too. So I'm quoting here. Friends, since you enjoyed the Hartmann and Weiss website, here is possibly their only rival in making ultimate quality bolt-action rifles from scratch in all calibers and configurations. Waffen Jung by Master Theo Young. There are other master gun makers in Germany like Harry Beidner, who builds some magnificent big bore rifles, but Beidner uses the H&W action on his rifles, making him an associate of H&W and not a completely independent gun maker like Jung. Check out their website, www.waffenjung.de. DE stands for Germany. Hope you enjoy the pictures. Cheers. Signed, Mehul Kamdar. Close quote. So there you can see, even on the international scene, Waffen Jung is being compared to Hartmann and Weiss, a better known brand because of their London importation, as I've said. Enough about the maker. Now let's look at this beautiful masterpiece itself. Although it is in mint condition, we know this rifle has been pre-owned, as none of Theo Young's rifles leave their premises without being built for a customer, and it was not built for me. As a brief overview, looking at the rifle, Young's design is very similar to the Reimer Johansen rifle we reviewed in episode 22. It's basically an English look again, with a classic comb, an open grip, and a tapered narrow fore-end. In all respects, it is in keeping with the Safari styling. It has the barrel-mounted front sling swivel eye, express sights, an ebony fore-end tip, pistol grip cap, and superbly beaded cheek piece, which you can't see from this view. It is chambered in the noble 416 Rigby caliber with a 24-inch barrel. From their website, we know Waffen Jung calls this model rifle Magnum. It is serial number 1482, easy for me to remember, 10 years before the date Columbus discovered America. As an express rifle, it has all the features popular with professional hunters. The action is a true modern German Mauser 98 Magnum double square bridge action, and it's very similar to the Reimer Johansen action and the Prechtel version now used by Rigby for their double square bridge Magnum rifles. Now, since there are so many fine details, let's move to the side table to examine them closely. Here we are at the side table set with our Waffen Jung rifle in the maker's case. It has a few accessories: nickel oil bottle, leather sling, and 2 covered compartments for cleaning tools. There's a space for cleaning rod set, which is not here. Also notice the bolt has its own compartment, so we can easily see the rifle is unloaded. For this portion of the video, I have pre-disassembled the scope. Let's examine the bolt first. Being a true Mauser 98 design, it is released from the action via the traditional Mauser type bolt release by pulling out the front of the bolt release lever. As I hold it, you can see the entire bolt assembly, including the bolt, the breech bolt sleeve, and the safety, are all color case hardened and have much engraving. The bolt and the bolt handle, bolt body and the bolt handle are not engraved, but the bolt knob is. The bolt knob is masterfully engraved with progressive radial cut checkering and a gold-filled curved line separating a row of tiny, fine dots running single file along the border of the gold line. Just a remarkable detail. As to the mechanics, it has the long extractor, which is a positive extractor, so it's controlled round feed action, as we've covered in previous videos. Note the unusual bluing of the extractor. I don't know if the camera can pick that up. I will mention more about this in a moment. Like other Mausers, the bolt has two locking lugs just behind the bolt head and an additional third locking lug, or which is a safety lug. As to the shape of the bolt handle, it retains the traditional Mauser straight down pull with no curved or swept back, but the stock is inletted to allow for a telescopic sight clearance. Also, the safety is the rectangle version of the Model 73 position safety, but carries an additional locking lever on top, which must be pressed down before moving the safety arm forward to fire. This prevents accidental moving the safety into fire position by snagging it onto something, such as pulling it out of a scabbard. For demonstration of the safety, you can see my episodes 1 and 2. The breech bolt sleeve is color case hardened and engraved like the rest of the action, and it is also engraved with the gold letter F for fire. I'll replace the bolt now and pick up the rifle. Let's look at the metalwork of the rifle. I'm holding the bridges here for you. I'll get back to the scope and the ring system in a few minutes. First, let's just look at the magnificent work of art overall. And I'm primarily talking about the finish, but also some of the custom features. Besides the entire bolt assembly we just saw, the rest of the action, the Magnum receiver with its square bridges, a portion of the bolt release, the complete undermetal assembly, one of the stock cross bolts, and the pistol grip cap are all color case hardened and engraved. The double square bridge receiver is like the one I showed you in the Reimer Johansen, that it has the bridges are machined into the action to fit the rectangle scope ring system. The rear square bridge has two rectangle cutouts on each side to allow the rectangle rear scope ring to lock down, and the front bridge is machined to accept the rectangle front scope ring to turn 90 degrees and pull up tight into the slot in the bridge. This is amazing technology, but it doesn't stop there. Each bridge is finely cross-hatched and bounded by integral gold wire borders. There is also a gold ring around the stock crossbolt that shows on both profiles. The bottom metal has a one-piece straddle hinge floor plate with center bow release. As I've said, it is finished with color case hardening and is fully engraved, including the action screws. And as is the custom of German makers, the engraving is not signed. Mechanically, the magazine opens with the traditional hinge floor plate with center bow release. Pressing that, you can see the magazine follower, magazine spring, and now I'll close it. We haven't covered the barrel and its components yet, but before we leave the action, while still referring to the finish, there's a subtle piece of work which accents the rifle that the layman might not readily catch. The inset face of the bolt release, the trigger bow release, and the extractor on the bolt we just looked at. 3 pieces of metal in the action are all fire blued. These contribute subtly but significantly to the overall beauty of the rifle. But it is not overdone. For instance, there is a second crossbolt, which is simply an inlaid ebony, without repeating the frills of the first crossbolt, which is the color case hardened and mounted by a gold ring. Perhaps the maker thought it would be an overkill, taking the rifle over the top, from being tasteful to gaudy. Theo Jung knows where to stop. Internally, we can't see them here, but other mechanical features include a top-of-the-line single-stage adjustable trigger inscribed rectangle, as seen when the stock is removed, a lock on the firing pin, the firing pin's gas deflection device, the gas discharge feature on the bolt design, and the breech bolt sleeve with its buttress thread and fire shield. Those are all internal things. Now let's look at the barrel and its assemblies. A close examination reveals incredible workmanship, many hours of handwork. The 24-inch barrel has hammer forged rifling. It's made of the finest steel. It is stepped down 2 places, about 1 7/8 inch from the front action bridge, and again about 5 inches forward of that. The barrel is fitted with the safari style, with the front sight as a silver bead, with a flip over ivory bead for fast cover in the brush or for low light conditions. Notice how it works. You pull that up and over. It's very simple. Front. Holland sometimes uses this and calls it the flip over moon sight. There are other versions of it, and some have been around a long time, like the one we saw on the Johansson rifle in episode 22. But this is the niftiest one and the easiest to change sights that I've seen. The front sight assembly is mounted on a banded ramp. The barrel also has a banded front sling swivel eye and a quarter ramp with 3-leaf express sight, with 2 folding and 1 fixed leaves. The fixed leaf is marked 50, while the folding ones are marked 100 and 150. They are drift adjustable for windage. Our master gun maker didn't stop there. All 3 leaves have gold vertical lines for quick eye alignment. If you examine them closely, you can see that each leaf has a highly polished triangle or pyramid in the center, bringing your eye up to the leaf's notch. Also, the sight base is finely cross-hatched between the leaves. Cross-hatched right here. I've never seen these kinds of handwork details before, not even on my Hartmann and Weiss. As to the quarter ramp, the craftsmanship is just outstanding. Looking at it in profile, it is built up in 3 levels or 3 planes of surfaces. From the top view, it is stippled with borders in 3 sections. The top level carries the express sight in the center, and its surface is finely stippled and surrounded with hairline borders. And between the express sight and the front receiver bridge, there's an inset inscription that reads caliber 460 Rigby in gold. This surface of the ramp terminates at the rear with a gold filled arch boundary to give the appearance in profile that the gold continues as part of one of the 2 gold bands at the breech of the barrel. The front end of the quarter ramp is the lowest or 3rd plane, and it is also finely stippled with fine borders and shaped in a long point or a triangle, reducing down in thickness to make a pleasing transition where it meets the barrel. On top of the barrel, between the second step down and the front swivel band, the barrel is engraved with the maker's name and city in gold, Waffen Jung. The front sight ramp takes on a similar look of the quarter ramp, starting with a point and swooping upward to the level of the sight, and it also is finely stippled with narrow borders. But a close look reveals additional hand-dotted engraving along both shoulders of the front sight base for their full length. I've never seen that detail before. Besides being masterful craftsmanship, it has a function of dissipating glare from the front sight base if one were to use the open sights. All of the barrel components are highly polished and blued. At the breech end there are two gold-filled bands, one ending with scrolls where it joins the receiver. Just extraordinary metal work. Let's return to our main set and discuss the stock. Here we see the entire rifle with scope mounted. Looking at the stock, this is a piece of fancy Turkish walnut with beautiful colors of warm browns and black streaks with areas of fiddleback green.
It's so beautiful, and I really like the sheen on this one.
Yes, and the figure is well planned for a big bore rifle. It is a pure, custom classic shape with a European style cheek piece, which is shaped with a very well and distinct shadow line or bead. The hand checkering appears to be 24 lines per inch and is full wraparound point pattern over the wrist with a point on the wrist. And it's fully wraps around the forearm with a combination of single and molared borders exquisitely executed. The fit of wood to metal is perfect. When you rub your finger over the areas where they meet, you cannot feel the junctures. The finish is executed without a flaw, with Waffen Jung's special process of weather-resistant finish that resembles the best French polish oil finish, but with more durability. The stock is fitted with a genuine ebony tip, and besides the two cross bolts already covered, it is fitted with an engraved and color case hardened steel pistol grip cap, a rear sling eye, and 1/2 inch German Schraffkopf recoil pad, yielding a length of pull of 14¼ inches. For other specs, the trigger pull is light, but consistently trips the trigger gauge at 2 pounds. The weight of the rifle is 9.2 pounds or 4.17 kilograms without scope, and with scope it's 10.8 pounds or 4.90 kilograms.
Isn't that heavy?
Yes, but like all our other big bore rifles, you appreciate the weight when you shoot the gun and realize how much its weight assists in reducing the impact of recoil. The Telescopic Sight is a Zeiss's high-end Victory 1.5 by 6 by 42 rail scope. The rail scopes are the best and most secure. As we've said, it's affixed with quick detachable rectangle rings that are mated to the integral machined bridges of the rifle, serving as scope ring bases. The scope reticle is a German number 4 with 3 heavy lines for fast target acquisition. And interestingly enough, the Hartmann & Weiss rifle I owned was also fitted with a Zeiss scope. I'm going to pick it up. I'll open the chamber to make sure it's empty. You can see that it's empty. The rifle comes to hand with ease with a quick sight picture, whether using the express sight or the scope. That's a true test of a fine rifle design. The rectangle rings system allows for quick detachable scope, as we learned in episode 22. It is a very positive design, locking the rear base in place and assuring zero change in sight alignment. We saw how it works in episode 22, but it's such a neat system. Let me demonstrate it here again. To remove it, just unscrew the locking collar at the base of the rear rectangle ring, swivel the scope to 90 degrees to the right, and it frees the scope. To reinstall it, just reverse the process, put in the front ring, bend the scope back, turn the lock collar, and it's done. That's it.
That's really easy. I remember that system from before.
Yes, that was about 2 episodes back.
Mm-hmm.
Let me set it back down. Now to summarize my external examination of this work of art, I would say the inletting is superb throughout. It's cut clean, it's crisp, and truly professional for both the action and the entire barrel channel. The overall fit, finish, and proper dimensions couldn't be better, and balance is perfect. For the condition of the rifle, if we break it down in its parts, it's fully original. The blue remains at about 99%. There's a little blew off the extractor here from opening and closing the bolt. The original finish is 100%, the checkering is 100%, and the bore is new. As we've shown, this great rifle comes with an oak and leather presentation trunk case with maker's label and a canvas and leather outer shell.
Do we know how much this rifle costs?
The maker's ordering price for a new Magnum rifle with comparable finish and features like this is 46,750 euros, just over $50,000. Add $1,750 for the scope, and the total package would be just under $52,000.
Is this the most expensive rifle we've ever reviewed?
Close, if not the most. So going back to all those years ago when my friend Bud categorized Waffen Jung with Hartmann and Weiss, and then in 2005 when that astute blogger wrote in that Waffen Jung was the best rifle in the world, and now after finally having one to compare, I can see that those two rifle buffs really knew what they were talking about. From examining this rifle, I would say that I've learned that both of those guys were extremely knowledgeable after all. This Waffen Jung is a work of art by Theo Jung and would not take a backseat to any other maker. That's it for today. Thank you, Virginia, and thank you, viewers, for watching. And if you enjoyed this episode, I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and share with others. And I hope you learn a little and enjoy much from the series of videos, Special Guns with Roger Rule. Thank you. If you want to get involved with these types of guns, I recommend gunsinternational.com. The owners are great people. I know them and have been using their website since they started. I find it the best source for both buying and selling any great collectible gun.